Hey friends, welcome back to the Origami Phoenix tutorial, and today we are going to be collapsing. Now, for those of you that skipped the precreasing tutorial, I'm just going to go over some information that you might have missed. So this is my Phoenix design as featured from the Tadashi Mori design battle, and the one that we're folding is a little bit modified and I think improved. So for one thing, it's going to have a longer tail. And the overall structure is a little bit more intuitive. So just keep that in mind. It's not going to be exactly like this one. There's going to be some small changes, but I think it'll be great. Now, in the pre-creasing tutorial, we talked about what paper to use. I am actually using an 80 centimeter square. It's really big. And I recommend you at least use 60 centimeters. That's probably the smallest I'll go. For example, this one was made from 65 centimeters, but the new design, it's going to shrink a little bit more. So to get all these nice details, like at least use 60 centimeters, but larger could be better. This is double tissue. If you need to know how to make your own double tissue, I have videos for that. If you need to figure out the grid, I have videos for that too. But if you're skipping the pre-creasing and just doing it on your own, you can, probably have all that knowledge already. Other than that, the crease pattern will be linked down in the description. It'll be up on my website, so you can just pre-crease everything, or you can just check the pre-crease tutorial. But let's get into this collapse tutorial, and yeah. All right, as we begin, I'm going to leave the crease pattern here, and this is just what we pre-creased. Just for reference, I'll be pointing out the different sections as we fold. And the first thing we're going to do is actually fold our our vertical grid lines all together. So we're basically making like a stick of all the grid folds, or like a fan. So this is the top of the Phoenix. So this would be the top area. You can see the pre-creases, and you can notice that the outside line is mountain for our grid. Same thing with on the side. And you're just going to go mountain, valley, mountain, valley, mountain, valley, all the way until it's like a big, long, folded up fan. So go ahead and do that. If you need a little visual, basically on your grid, just mountain, valley, all the way across your sheet. And we'll come back when it's a stick. All right. So now we have our grid all folded up like this. And the first thing we're going to do is actually, you can see I drew some lines on our crease pattern here. And we're going to be folding those. So we actually have to unfold the top part of our grid a little bit. Remember, this is the top of the crease pattern in order to do these pleats. And then we're actually going to fold it right back into this stick. And let me show you the reason why. So you can see it's just a pleat of mountain valley. And I know I didn't draw it all the way through, but we're going to fold it all the way through. We're going to ignore this for now. The reason we do that is if you look at the actual crease pattern, you can see that the difference between these pleats that run all the way through versus something like this, which the mountain valleys alternate. These are just hinges. So if you watch my crease pattern class, that would be if you just, folded all the layers down at the same time. But the pleat, because they are going all the way through, that means they need to happen first before we do the rest of our grid. And it's a lot easier to do that first. Like, you technically don't have to, but it's a lot easier to do that than to do it later. And I know we have it not going all the way through the on the crease pattern that I'm showing, but for the folding sequence, we're going to be going all the way through. But yeah, that's just explanation of why. Now, this paper is really long, like I mentioned before, so you can see I've actually used some clips to keep it in place for myself, so it's a little bit easier to manage. So you can get some for yourself. I recommend to use anything that's not metal. You can even wrap it in like plastic if you need to, but you don't have to. It just, I'm going to be placing it there a lot and taking it off, so it's not that important. But let's get started with this pleat. So let's find those diamonds first. So they're just 1 unit diamonds in the middle. They're right here. So through the diamonds is going to be mountain, and then underneath it is going to be valley. So I can actually just start kind of in the middle here as I open up the layers. And the nice thing is, as we kind of do this, once the pleat is in place, we can start reclosing the grid like before to kind of keep it in place like that. And I think we can actually just do the bottom pleat and the top pleat at the same time. So the top pleat happens here. This one we might have to invert the creases from what our grid originally was, but that should be fine. Just remember it's mountain through the 1 unit diamonds and then valley beneath it. And then as I open up the grid, we're going to do the pleats. And then as we do the pleats, we're going to refold the grid. And so that's just how you kind of tackle this. And you're going to see it makes kind of cascading pleat right here. And that's going to be for the chest feathers. And then I like to just do a couple and then try to replace the grid because it's going to hold it in place as I keep working. So let's keep going for this pleat. And because the grid is, together at the bottom, it's going to throw some of the creases off as you do it. So just keep aware and try not to make any new creases. Really try to stay on the grid. So that might mean opening up more from the bottom. You probably don't have to open the whole thing up, but just enough to get yourself through. And so as you can see, I'm getting or at least one of the edges. And then once I get one of the edges, again, I can start to refold our grid to get to stay in place. I'm going to do the same thing with the top pleat. Because the edges are probably going to be the spots with the most amount of drift, as we would say. Or it wants to go off of our creases. And then even once that's there, I can maybe use a clip to hold it in place just for now. As I get the rest of this pleat figured out. Since the top pleat has to invert the crease, it's a little bit more finicky than the one below, but not hard by any means. You just need to make sure you are lined up. And again, as I do that, it's easier to start collapsing the grid like this as you go, because it will make it less warped or weird to fold these together. And so we're just going to keep going just like this. You can maybe pay attention to how I am handling the paper, which is very carefully, just to make sure these are all lined up as I go through. Now it's nice that even though we have to invert this crease, the pleat is along, a grid reference line. So it's pretty easy to tell when you're on and when you're off of the grid. Okay, so that's like half of it done. I'm gonna flip it around so that I can just start the other edge and then come back towards the middle. So that's gonna be a little bit easier in terms of handling the paper. I'm going to hit this bottom pleat first, just because it's a little easier. Get that running all the way across these pleats. Just like that. And then now I'm going to do the top, which I have to invert some of the creases. Now, if you really want to, you can just invert these creases on either side if you want to pinch it. But if not, it's basically you just take this edge and valley fold it down. But whatever process you think will make it the most precise for you is the one you should do. Especially if you're using a larger paper like me, it's going to take more time. It'll be a little bit slower. But folding slow is always better than folding fast, I would say. There's not really any value in folding quickly, but there's definitely value in folding slowly if it's to achieve some extra precision. And as we have that set, now everything is kind of coming together. And we should be able to just close all of our grid back up pretty easily. Just like this. Like that. There we go. And now just everything else all together. We're almost there. Just a few more. All right. And we kind of have a mess in the middle, but we should be able to just pull it a little bit and the grid recollapses for us. And there we go. So now we have these pleats running through our whole grid. Now, obviously, we're going to fold the structure, so that's not the case later on. But this is just how you start. Now, the next thing I want you to do is find those diamonds again in order to find like the center of our fold. And the way you can find a center is if you pay attention to the crease pattern, you can look for the top of the head, which will be a diamond right here, followed by, you know, like 2 units going down and then starts at the hinges. So just recognize the pattern, because then below that we'll find our diamonds, which you don't really see the diamond, but you can see half of them like right there and right there. And that's how you know that this is the center. And I'm going to call this the axes. So on the crease pattern, it doesn't really show that there's, actually, I think it does show that there's an axis. So if you know what that word means, or an axis, something like that. But basically this is going to be like the front face of our Phoenix, which, oh yeah, so right over here, see how there's no like valley fold going through the very center of the model? That is why it is our axis. All right, so now we continue in our collapse. The next thing we are going to do is actually these sections on the edge. We're going to ignore the diamonds in the middle, kind of. We still need to acknowledge that it takes up space. So I'll show you how that kind of works. But we're going to be folding at least this section out, which will kind of involve these pleats that we just did. And then also like this flap with all the other 2 unit diamonds. It's kind of hard to explain, but I'll show you. But we're going to be paying attention a lot to these units right here. So let's go over here, center it so y'all can see. All right, so I'm going to undo my clips and we're going to find the parts that we need to collapse first. So we already have the pleats, right, running through the model. So those are kind of, you know, acknowledged. The next one is these 2 unit diamonds. So if I open up here a little bit, you can kind of see it starts right in the middle and then it becomes a bunch of 2 unit diamonds that run pretty far into our model. Now what we're going to do is you can see that since they come to the center, we have an X right here. And I'm going to mountain fold between that X and then count down 2 units and then make a valley fold like that. And that is going to be important because essentially that is the structure we're going to have, or that's going to be required as we fold out the other side. So we can kind of hold it like this as we work on one side, and that will allow the other side not to fight us. And then once one side's done, the second side should be actually a lot easier. But let's start with this side. And what we're going to do is just, again, remember that mountain and valley we just did, but we need to find where that unit starts. And the easy way to do that is actually just to start from the edge, find our pre-creases down here, and then follow it up until we hit that same point where we did the mountain fold, which you can actually see is right here. So you can see our pre-crease is right there and right there, which just happily lines up with that mountain valley we did just before. And I'm doing this one side at a time. Let me show you the other side. The other side is going to stay folded up like this. So if you want to clip just like half of the side like that for now, just so it doesn't get in the way, you can do that if you'd like, or just remember that it's still folded up. And we're just working on one side for now. Now that we've found this point, you'll see now we need to actually do the horizontal grid lines. And a few of these we might have to actually invert the crease, or maybe not actually. But at least from this point, which is where the mountain fold is, it's going to be mountain fold right here. Up to the point over here. And we can actually start to fold that mountain fold as a structure. And let's actually go down. It's going to be a little bit easier to go down first. And now we're just following our ridge all the way down. So it's going to basically be folding the grid. So I'm folding the grid back, but then when we hit our ridge, which is the diagonal pre-crease, we need to do the horizontal ones. And you can just let these horizontal ones go all the way to the end for now. We don't have to worry about anything over there yet. And you can see it starts to collapse like this, which this is a very familiar box pleat structure. If you folded any sort of, design with box pleating, or have done my crease pattern class. And we're just going to do this all the way down. So pretty straightforward. And we're just following this crease until right here where it goes back up towards the top. But once it goes outwards, it's, that's pretty much where you are home free. Now, because we're just about there, I can actually start from this pre-crease, which is at the corner, coming towards the V, and we can just do this all at the same time. And it's essentially a deconstructed sink fold, just like that. You can refer to your crease pattern, not this one, but the Mountain Valley one, to really see these creases happen. Now we're going to just ignore the claws for now. We don't need to fold those yet, but we're going to start from this outside one because now we have to do the top section. And this is a little bit harder because we have these pleats. And the reason I'm going to start from this edge is because we're going to be unfolding these pleats from the edge, but we don't want to unfold them in the middle. But we can treat it essentially the same way. Just really check your pre-creases because it goes down and then it'll zigzag as it gets to these pleats. But let's start with this one at the edge here, right? Sorry, actually, it's not that one. That's a claw. So if we open our pleat, then we actually see the correct one, which is right here. And then see how when we open that pleat, we actually can go a little bit more to then do the Mountain Valley box pleat structure that we are so familiar with, just like at the bottom. And we're gonna have to unfold this one too to see where it follows. Right, see how it goes up. And now we can just refold our grid accordingly to these grid lines, just like this. So you are having to change the direction of some of these grid lines, but you can see which ones on your crease pattern or just by looking. It's just Mountain Valley, Mountain Valley, Mountain Valley. And you only unfold the pleats up until you see the rest of your pre-creases, which is basically how it resolves. So you can see one of them is right here. It's going to be a V. And that is, I'm going to zoom up on this part. That's going to be right here. Right. But we don't worry about that too much yet. I know I'm tilted in axis too. It should be faced like this way according to crease pattern, but it's a little easier to fold for yourself if you angle it this way. Again, this is just like a paper awareness thing. But you can see the rest of your pre-creases. So it goes down and then that 1 unit thing. And back this way. So we can actually just keep going from the edge a little bit. And this one isn't too hard to fold yet. But this last one is going to get a little confusing, potentially. But just try at least to, kind of collapse it according to its creases. Now, in order to fully collapse this, let's start actually right here at this point. We're going to want to fold it, and it's actually going to recreate the pleat right here. And so I'm actually going to hold the paper on this grid unit and just kind of squeeze it together until I can squeeze that pleat. And you can see after I squeeze that pleat, it's kind of laying back flat. But then we have to resolve it. So then it pushes back against this one. And once we're here, now this next V also forms a pleat, but it's kind of laying on top of everything. And you need it to lay on top first in order to collapse the rest of this down. But it's not too difficult. You just need to make sure it is pinched. So basically, see how this is the pleat right here? I'm pinching it and pushing it down, and then kind of refolding our grid like this. And then now I just have to resolve this part as mountain valleys, and it will allow it to recollapse back. Just like this. So I'm just working towards the edge because I had to invert some of the creases. Okay, but now we have this section, and we can see if we push it in, now it can collapse together, and we can actually fold the whole thing down again. And remember how we had that mountain valley pleat we did? That's how it's going to need to collapse flat. And make sure you don't lose any layers here. There are quite a lot. So see, here's that mountain. So I guess we kind of only need that one for now in order to actually just get to lie flat. But in reality, it's going to valley fold over like that later on. But yeah, I guess for now we don't really have to worry about that because we don't have anything else like really folded out. So at least just that mountain is the important one. It's going to lay like this. See? So we haven't done the other side yet. I'm just kind of showing what it looks like from both sides. This was a little tricky of getting those pleats resolved all in here. And if yours is not super clean, you can just kind of use your thumbs to push it to its existing creases, and it'll clean up just like that. Now, if you'd like, the claws, maybe we'll do, I guess we'll do them now since we're at it, but they might unfold on you later on. But we can actually, okay, we'll leave some of the claws later. So if you look at the crease pattern, it actually is a steeper angle. I'll just kind of explain, right? We can just fold reverse folds to make points. But later on, we're going to pre-crease and then do some sync folds. But that'll probably be in the shaping tutorial. So for now, we're just going to fold along our creases as little reverse folds. And it'll just kind of block in that, okay, these are the toes, right? These are the claws. Let me get a visual for you all. And yeah, so here we are so far. And something like this. All right, so we did one side. Now we did this side. We just need to do the other side now. I'm going to show it again just because it's a little confusing, but I'll go a little bit faster. Now, if you are curious about what you can do with the current layers, if you count 5 units down from the mountain fold, so 2, 4, 5, you can actually valley fold along this, like that. And this is actually kind of how the Phoenix is going to be laid out. So this is the bottom of the body tail feather section, and then there's the other tails below it. And here are the legs. This is the torso or chest feathers, and then the head will be up here. So if you want 5 units down, you can valley fold. But if not, just probably collapse it like this, like we did the other side. And first thing we're going to do is open up some of these layers to find our pre-creases. So starting from the edge, and we can see our claws, and then we can see this one. So this is the long one here. And then it comes back up on itself all the way to here where that mountain fold is. And once again, we start the collapse by making sure this one is mountain, like that, on the horizontal grid unit. That way, we can start to follow our pre-crease downwards. So see how I can squeeze right there? And then all I got to do is fold up mountain, valley on our horizontal grid units like this. And like that. And it's going to follow this ridge down until around here. In which case now I can go from the edge, find the correct ridge here where we pre-creased. And then same thing, mountain, valley, until it closes up. Just like that. Just like this. And then now we can start the other side, right? Starting over here. But we have to undo these pleats that are running through the whole model. So I'm just starting from here. Now we ran into the pleats, so we need to undo them just towards the edge until we see the rest of our pre-creases, which is like right here. And then we start working from the edge first on this one. So we mountain fold our vertical grid lines so that we can start to access this ridge. And then now we work on the horizontal ones, which we might have to invert a little bit as we follow our ridge upwards. So I'm kind of pinching these grid lines the correct orientation before I start to collapse them. It makes it a little bit easier. Just like that. And now we're at this kind of tricky section, right, where we have to resolve the pleats. So like this. And we have basically this zigzag of valley, and this will be valley as well. And then it goes up into this mountain here. It's like this. And then we need this first before we can actually resolve the pleats. But we're going to start with this one first. So I think what I did is I held here, and that lets me squish this section together to resolve that pleat. Now that one's resolved. I can start to fold a little bit further until we hit this next one. This next one, we can pinch into a pleat, and we need to push it down into our grid like that. That way we can resolve the other side like so. Just like that. And then the last thing to do would be to fold in our claws. just like that for now. And we have our second leg done, second set of claws. And my claws are a little bit, they caught some paper. I'm gonna make sure they're sharp. Let's be a little careful. There we go. And that is part of the middle section collapsed. All right, so we have both sides collapsed. And I know you might be thinking, all right, do we do like the central diamonds now? No, we can actually do those last, you know, a little bit. We're actually going to be working on the tail section now. So the rest of this long strip. And then after this is collapsed, it'll be in a much more manageable state for your table, especially if you're using a paper this long like I am using. So that'll be really nice. And the collapse, it's similar to the approach that we did for the torso and legs, but it's a lot easier because we don't have any pleats running through. But what I want you to do is we're going to find this X right here, this X. So it's like a fair bit below that torso section, but it's in between the end. And I'm going to zoom in on the crease pattern. So the X is right here that we're worrying about. And what I want you to do is, once again, we're going to do that mountain fold. Like this. Just to kind of tell ourselves that's where the tail's going to be. And then because like the paper is running into itself over here, we can actually just valley fold it back down. And the exact grid that you need to valley fold it will line up with where the leg reaches here. For now, so it'll be like that. So the edge is touching right here, but honestly, that's not super important. We're just gonna let that be for now. Now here's where it's gonna get a little bit tricky because we're gonna have to unfold a little bit of paper just to make this a bit easier for ourselves. Let me zoom out of the crease pattern. So this area, and I'm gonna draw a line. So basically everything below this line, which is below this mountain fold we just did, all the way to the edge, we're actually going to do, we're gonna change the grid from being vertically folded to horizontally folded all the way up. And so what that looks like is you're gonna have to unfold, and let me line this up correctly so that y'all can see, is that basically starting from that bottom edge, instead of it being folded up as a grid like that, we're going to start from the bottom with a mountain fold horizontally like this and go upwards. So like that. And what you can see is because the grid is collapsed, this is very similar to when we did the pleats. It's kind of arcing along, so it makes it a little bit harder or a little bit more dexterous to actually get this grid to collapse down or to get all those mountain valleys. So just take your time, and let me show you here. Please start with that first row over here. Just take your time to fold this all the way up until you hit that mountain fold, or that X basically right there, and it'll all make more sense very soon. But let's just do this together if you want. This is probably gonna take me a few minutes, so you can work on your own. You can pause and then skip till when I'm finished, but I'm just going to have this on camera for those to see so you don't get confused at all, or at least you'll be able to track like how far I went up or what I'm doing, because it is a little bit weird to do. And once again, I'm actually going to open up further along the grid to kind of make this easier for myself. And you can see our X right here. So we don't want to go past that, but everything below that, we're folding up along the grid like this. Now, if you did your accordion correctly, this should, hopefully your mountain valleys are all in the correct direction, so you don't have to be inverting creases. You just kind of have to click them into place. But it's a little tedious, but it'll make the sequence for folding the wings and the tails a little bit easier. And that way we don't have to do something called like the umbrella collapse, which is basically opening up all the layers and then starting from that point and collapsing it. And when you do it like that, it kind of looks like an umbrella until it's fully collapsed. This way it's a little bit more sequential. It's easier to keep track of because we're just folding the grid line. And we're still kind of opening up the whole model, but it's just a little bit more step by step. It's a lot easier to show on camera as well. So if you still have the problem sometimes of losing your place when you're collapsing crease patterns or folding models, then try collapsing things like this. And over time, you'll be able to recognize when to do something like this on crease patterns to kind of create your own folding sequences for other people's designs or your own designs. Okay, so we are just about at the point that I mentioned. So, right, the bottom part is kind of opened up, but we can see that X right here. That is that same X we talked about beforehand. And what we want to pay attention to is our creases or ridges going upwards. So if you can see like these guys going upwards. And essentially we're folding it to a point. And right now my pre-creases are mountain and they're going to stay like that. So I'm actually doing a valley fold right here. And I'm going to rotate my paper so it's, well, maybe I don't have to. I just want you all to be able to see it. But on that X, we're going to be doing the box pleat collapse following the ridges of these two directions. So I'm going to do the right side first. And I can still just keep folding up on the grid horizontally. Like that. A little bit as I trace this ridge upwards. Because then once it hits the ridge, then I just refold our vertical grid like that. And it keeps going and going. So it's going to go up, I think it was 9 grid units for how long our tail was. And I know you might see like we unfolded some of our leg right here. You don't go past that, I guess. You don't have to go fully past that unless if it makes it easier to just start collapsing for our tail. But you can see that pretty soon now our tail has resolved and it's going back the other direction. So I don't have to fold the horizontal grid up anymore. Now we're actually going back down the other direction. And this is where our wings are starting to form. So I'm going back this way. Just tracing our ridge. And now it's kind of like unfolding some of these horizontal grids to replace it with where the ridge meets and then the vertical grid that we had before. Right, and as we have that, this part can close like a sink fold would. Now the edge is still kind of open because we're almost there. We just have to follow these ones right here. Like that. And here we have it going back up. Now the paper will get a little bit thick. You see where we have this one by one unit. So once you collapse it to that point, it's gonna make a thick, like 1 unit flap that sticks out. So let me show you. And it might be kind of hard to fold along that crease, but really try. And what you're gonna have to do is, in order to fold that, it's going to valley fold right here. It's just that the paper is getting a little bit thick. And then now we go back up that 1 unit, which means it has to mountain fold right there. See how that's a 1 unit? And then same thing, there's going to be another valley fold adjacent to it in order to collapse the rest of our pre-creases back down like this. And then from here, now this is pretty much all done. You can just kind of recollapse the leg. And this is why we didn't do the full toes yet, because, you know, there's going to be some unfolding. But for the most part, this half should be all done. And just try to find your creases. You can see mine got stuck a little bit right here. So just gently recorrect anything that got messed up. And that is one side done, just like this. Now it's going to be a lot more fun once the other side is done and everything can collapse back up again. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to show the same process, but just kind of show exactly, you know, following the ridge. I won't explain everything. It'll just look exact same as the other side. All right, so we're starting the other side. Now, once again, we see from this side that this is where that X was. It's kind of hard to show because it's paper is everywhere. But right down there, and you can see this ridge. All right, so in order to kind of fold that pre-crease correctly, we actually have to fold in half. So remember I talked about the axis. This was the axis. We're temporarily folding a valley fold between that axis just to kind of collapse the other side down. But you don't have to fold the whole thing as a valley fold. It definitely don't do that. Just kind of pinch it where it needs to for the tail to start to collapse. And then we can keep folding our horizontal grid as we go up the ridge. Like that. And you know, if this is your first box pleat model, which hopefully it's not, but this is a very like normal box pleat collapse experience, especially this part right here, which, you know, over time you'll get used to. These are things that, you know, I can do while maybe watching a TV show or anime or YouTube video or something like that, where as long as I can see the ridges, I kind of don't even really need to pay attention too much to the actual folding or know what to do next. You just follow the ridge and collapse. And this would be like a very easy kind of collapse sequence. I was thinking, like, could I do this blindfolded? I don't know if I could do it blindfolded. It's a little bit hard to feel the ridges here, but you know, maybe if I was folding something I folded a lot, then part of it I could do without looking. Who knows? But all right, so we got our ridge all the way up to this point, and you can see I'm actually just grabbing just to kind of close and form that valley fold in between. Once again, this is our axes. It's messed up a little bit here. Don't worry about that for now. And then now we're coming back down for the wings. So we're following it like this. The wings. And we get to here, and then it goes up and does that little 1 unit zigzag, which is a little bit finicky. Again, you have to kind of pinch the mountain folds here, and then pinch for a valley fold when you get to that 1 unit here. So here's another valley fold, as you need to put in order to get that grid unit. And then once again, you have mountain fold for that 1 unit. Like that. And then another valley fold. And then just the rest of the wing, which you can probably just collapse first and then fix that 1 unit flap. Like this. Just like that. And now we can kind of recollapse everything and again fix our other side of things got messed up over there to let it kind of fold flat. The only thing that won't really fold flat is our tail at the very end, because you see how the axis doesn't want to lay flat, and that's totally fine. It's because we need to fold the second tail, which we're going to do in a little bit, but at least you should be able to fix like everything else we've done so far. Make sure it's all good. You can squeeze the wing areas a little bit just to kind of reinforce it. We're actually going to do something on these 1 unit flaps before we do the second part of the tail, just because I think it's a little bit easier to do this part first, so we don't have to worry about this section. All right, so let's move on to these 1 unit flaps on the wings right here. Now let me show on the crease pattern the full one, and what we're looking at is right over here. And let me make sure you can see that. Maybe I should have done this beforehand. That might have helped a little earlier. But you can see how from this 1 unit flap we have a mountain fold and then a valley fold, and they go all the way to the bottom. And this is the same sort of pleat that I mentioned before when we were working on the very beginning of the collapse up here. But the reason we didn't do this one first is since it is actually just a small portion, it's not directly in the middle of everything, we didn't need to do it before collapsing the wing. So actually, let me just keep that section of the crease pattern visible. It's kind of isolated once it is collapsed, right? We don't have to mess with anything up here. So this is actually easy to do afterwards. And what we're going to do is just unfold these pleats here, so you can see our 1 unit flap here. And it's a little bit messy because of how thick it was earlier, but this should make things a little bit nicer. And what we're going to do is unfold. And I won't unfold everything just yet, just to show, like, we can get it started and then kind of do everything else. But this 1 unit flap, I can isolate it just by kind of holding right here, right? And this is that mountain fold. And then right here is where we want the valley fold. So we're valley fold into like the body, not towards the edge. We're folding inwards. And so I'm actually going to chase this mountain fold now all the way down to the edge of these pleats. And then I'm going to valley fold that pleat starting from the edge. And then it's kind of same thing. Now that it's on the edge, I'm going to refold our grid as I get that into place. Like this. And like this. You know, and now this is actually something where it's not too hard to show in a tutorial, but I could not imagine diagramming this or trying to explain this in a diagram, right? It's not a very hard step, but it would be very hard to communicate by drawing it. instead of just showing it. But that's just kind of a small tangent. You actually probably, if you've folded a lot of diagrams, you've probably have done a version of this step that was something like, oh, pulling out this layer and then recollapsing, and you probably didn't realize it's basically a deconstructed version of this, but it's just kind of weird to explain in diagram steps. Okay, so as we get close to the end, once again, we kind of have to lay the pleat first and then refold the grid to get it to stay down. And then from there on the ridge, then we can correct the ridge and make it a little bit cleaner. So right now it's a bit of a mess inside of there, but once it's mostly complete, I can just use my thumbs on the inside of these layers to kind of push it into a cleaner state. Like that. And so that's going to help make up some feathers for our wings in the future. And let me show you. It's actually what is used to get this layer of feathers. Now there's some more complicated steps to do before we get there, and it's going to change a little bit, but you know, you can start to see the concept of it happening just like that, right? Kind of cool. All right, so now we have to do the other side. All right, so the other side, let me first adjust our crease pattern. I'm just going to show the other side like that. Basically the same thing. I'll still show it. Just one more time on the opposite side. Maybe I can do this one a little bit faster. So we see our 1 by 1. I'm going to pop open this 1 by 1 just to start that mountain fold. And then I can unfold some more of the layers. Very carefully. If you pull this too hard, you might rip your paper, so be very careful. And then just chase that mountain fold all the way down. Once I'm down, I'm valley folding towards the center, not towards the edge. Like that, very important. And then as I fold this pleats, I am recollapsing the grid. And like this. And just keep going. And make sure it doesn't drift. It'll just line up to the rest of the grid. And it's getting a little bit feisty towards the top, so I'm just going to reach underneath a little bit to fix it. Kind of like that. And then once again, as we get closer to the top, we need to resolve the pleats. So we need to pinch this section down into the pleat first to get it to settle through. And then we can fix the ridge part afterwards. Like that. Use my fingers inside of this pocket, I guess. Make it cleaner. Press it all down. And then there is our wing, which will then turn into a row of feathers. And actually, it just so happens to line up with how this gradient affects. So it's going to be cool. It's going to be like an orange layer and then a yellow layer. That's pretty neat. Yeah. Interesting paper, right? Now yours, it could be just plain orange. It'd be fine. You don't have to have this weird yellow-orange paper I do. This is the only orange paper I could find. All right, so that's all done. And it's kind of a lot going on. But what I would recommend just for your orientation is with your wings, you see how we have basically a like 3 grid units from this big thick part to the stem of our wing. We can valley fold that as the hinge on both sides. And that way they don't get in the way of when we kind of collapse down the top of everything. So this is gonna be the legs, which I'm trying to grab separately from the body, like this. That. And then the head up here. So the wings are kind of like tucked in at the moment. Or I guess you could just leave them hanging out, but you just don't want to like have them run into the claws too much. But yeah, this is as flat as it's going to be. Hopefully, again, this is why we're using thinner paper. You can tell it gets a little bit thick over here. So if you're using thicker paper, it's going to be kind of monstrous, but that's okay. It'll give the body some depth, and we're going to be using methyl cellulose to wet fold it down. This paper is significantly thicker than this double tissue, and you can see I was still able to do it just fine using methyl cellulose to shape it. So don't worry if it's feeling a little thick. That's just the nature of box pleat models like this. Cool, so we have that done. Next is we're going to fold the second tail, which is going to pop out over here. So remember how I talked about how this was the axis, and we had to temporarily valley fold it for this tail. We're going to kind of keep it valley folded at the bottom so that we can actually pull out the tail. And where I'm pulling out is, if you look inside our pocket, you can see there's the diagonal flap on both sides. It's basically these 2 layers, which then split into 4 pretty quickly. But it's this tip right here. And what you're going to do is very gently pull it out. And you can see how I just widened some of the layers. That's going to make it a little bit easier to pull out. You really don't want it to rip here. So I'm pulling it out just like this. Just like that, right? Now it's kind of a bit more free, so it can kind of actually open up again. And we actually have, remember there was like an X. So if I turn it to the side, you can see there's more pre-creases that basically form a ridge all the way down like that. You can actually start to fold those naturally on both sides, kind of like a squash fold, right? But just to find those pre-creases. And now we can just one by one unfold basically some of these grid layers and reconstruct that tail. And let me show it at a better angle, maybe from the side again. So I'm going to show it from the side. So here is our crease, and you can see our ridge going down and down. And so as we go, we can start to recollapse that all together. So I can probably unfold a whole bunch of this, actually. Again, very carefully. This is happening on both sides simultaneously. Is now I can just follow this ridge down like that. And why not? Let's just undo all these layers all the way to the tip. And it's going to be like the most standard box pleat collapse ever. So since I undid all those pleats, you can see our ridge comes down, goes back up to the edge here, right? So I can actually just start a little bit on the edge, start at this tail part over here, and it will naturally kind of refold along our grid lines and our ridges into our tail. Now I'm working on one of the sides without really paying attention too much to the other side, but we're going to have to do the other side as well to fully get it flat. But because we basically already folded on all of these pre-creases and grid lines beforehand, you just kind of have to like poke and prod it in certain ways to get it to collapse. There's shouldn't be anything you have to change the direction of the crease for. You can see I pretty much just poked it and it's like just about there, which means we can just flip it over and do the same thing. I'm grabbing the edge where our precrease is, and then grabbing over here where this X was, and doing the same thing of popping all the grid lines back into place, following our ridge creases, which kind of also pop into place like this. And now that we did both sides, this will eventually come down to the very middle of our tails here, like that, on both sides. So see, we did the other side already. And it makes this flap, which then flies along our axis with the other tail. It was right here. And you can see now we have our two tails separated out, and the whole model can kind of lie flat like that. There's nothing interrupting our axis anymore. We have one tail, two tail, we have our wings back here. You've got, this is the body tail feather, this is the body feathers, the chest feathers, and then now we just have the head to collapse up here. Right, so we have pretty much everything except for the head collapsed, but I'm actually going to orientate like our Phoenix body parts in the correct way so that it can kind of set us up for later, and it'll be a little bit easier now, I think, than to do it after the head, because the head is going to take a long time to collapse actually. So what I want you to do is grab your tails, have them faced, let's say this way, and then we have our big flap thing here that we first collapsed with this mountain fold, and then 5 units down this valley fold. So I want that facing the tail, and then up here, this is where the head is. I want the head to be faced the other way. So now we have things facing towards the tail and things facing towards the head, like this. And for now, maybe naturally, like mine is, my legs and wings are faced towards the tail. Now that's going to slightly change. So let me see what the best way to show this is. Well, I'm going to grab all of our head layers just to get it out of the way so I can show you our leg. Here we can grab a leg. And right now everything is in line, right, with our axis. But what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to grab our leg, and we're doing two things at the same time. First, I'm pulling the leg so it's 90 degrees or perpendicular to our body like that. So it's basically just sticking out. But in order to do that, I actually have to make the wing valley fold towards the head. And we're using kind of a little stretch with the hinge to swivel our leg outwards like that. So I'm going to show the same thing on the other side. So we have our leg right here. Currently our wing is pointing down towards our tail. I'm going to be valley folding our wing upwards, and at the same time pulling our leg out to the side, perpendicular to our body. So now it's kind of like a funny looking flap sticking out from our body, and our wings are kind of hanging out up here facing our head, which is where the wings are supposed to be, which is great. So this is kind of the orientation of our model anatomically. Later on, our claws are going to be faced this way probably for shaping, and our wings are going to swing out too, right? But for now, this is what it looks like. I think the wings are going to be like that, so you can spread out. And then we'll have our head, and then we have our long tail section all back here. Cool. So just have that in mind. Have I know there's a lot of flaps, but now if you want, you can maybe lightly use some clips or something to like keep it in place. It might be too thick to use clips actually, but as long as you have this and you can kind of separate the head from the wings, I think you'll be good to go. Maybe you can just clip the wings down to hold them in place so they don't, you know, get really annoying for your head. So let me do that actually really quick. Is just kind of towards the edge, just kind of use a clip like that. And that will maybe keep them out of the way, who knows. And now we're going to be dealing with the head. All right, so let's get started on the head. And what we're going to do is fold out the feathers and just like the head parts. And then we're going to do all the sync folding and reverse folding, or reverse folding and sync folding. I think at least that's the easiest way to go. It's going to take slightly longer, but yeah, it'll be more sequential. So maybe let's start with the head. So the head consists of basically the beak and then the face. And what we can see here is we're going to have a diamond right along here, and then it comes down to form the neck. So let's see where we can go first. Essentially, well, actually, it might actually be easier to start from the corner. So just kidding. We're going to start from the corners first. So these are the head feathers. And these are going to be pretty easy because they're fairly isolated. So we can start directly from the corner. And we have basically, was it 3 units down and then 3 units back, or yeah, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 units down and then 4 units back up. And it keeps going and going. So we can start from the corner. And I know there's a lot of creases in the way, but we can just take a look at our crease pattern. I'm gonna zoom up. All right, so it's gonna be 2, 4, and these are the ridges that we're paying attention to in order what to collapse. And we're just gonna ignore everything else for now because those are for the reverse folds. And so as I start, in order to collapse this fully, we can actually take a look over here, which is the other side of those 4 units. So it goes 4 down, 4 up, and we can collapse these together, and it'll be pretty, you know, similar to what things we've done before. Main thing is just to keep track of where you are on the paper, and you'll notice that when we do that, see, now we have our first feather right here, and we can just keep going. So next one starts here, it goes down 4 and back up 4, like this. There we go. And let's see, I think we have one more before it actually starts to reach the head, or on this one, it will start to reach the head. So when we start to fold this head feather, it'll still be 4 on the way down. On the way back up, it's going to reach our head. So it doesn't quite come down the same way. We're gonna have to follow the pre-creases that we see on our head right here. And we might not be able to fully collapse this part yet until we do the other side. But at least we can kind of mock out or get as far as we can along this feather before doing the same thing on the other side. So right, yeah, it's not going to let me collapse it fully right here yet until we go to the other side. So let's go and do that. Because if we follow the creases, it's going to be something like this. Well, it'll kind of make us, let's collapse it. So we have like a 1 unit flap here, and then it kind of collapses down, but then we have to resolve the other side. So let's do that on the other side. I'll show it again. So find our pre-creases starting from the corner and then right here. And we just do the regular box pleat kind of step, or this is kind of an Elias stretch right here that you can do it as, especially since I'm actually doing it as a stretch. Just like this, and that is the first one on this side. Let's see, 4 units, and then we keep going. going to find the other precrease, which is right there. And collapse that down. Just like that. And then we're on the part that connects with the head. So again, we start it just like the other feathers, but we want to pay attention to where the precreases are for the head, which are a little different. And then to resolve it, let's finish up on the head feather on this side. So the creases go down, and then we have like a little zigzag right here. Like that. All right, so it's like a little 1 unit flap right there. And then this will let us collapse the face, or the face and the beak, which are basically 2 small flaps right here, or just like a little diamond, unless you fold it down. But we're going to fold it down for now, because that's kind of how we're observing our face, just like this. And so that's going to be our head, and we'll leave some other things as shaping. And as you can see, we also have our head feathers, which are going to stick out from the head right here, but we are not quite done with these yet. We have to do a little bit of work to get them going. And so let's do that next, and it's going to be the reverse folds. So these reverse folds are, as you see right here, right? They're the zigzag lines that go across. And then one nice thing about them is it's actually isolated for each head feather. So we can do them one at a time without having to like open the paper too much. But we are going to be opening the paper a bit and inverting some of the creases. And so let's take a look at the corner first, just because that's probably the easiest one to do. Now, conveniently, our reverse folds, which you can see right here, it's going to be all the way down here. And then once it hits the ridge, it comes back the other direction. They're going to be mountain folds. They're all mountain. And what you'll notice is if I start this one, right, now that's how it's like a reverse fold. And it's inverting this crease here. But when you do the same thing on the other side of the ridge, right, they will intersect each other and it will invert the crease on the ridge as well. So I like to start just on the edge just to get things going, so I know which direction the paper needs to go, kind of like that. And then from there I can complete the ones more on the inside. Now the one directly in the center is a little bit strange because there's a lot of creases going on. But what I want you to do is remember, it's a mountain fold. So this time we're going to prioritize the reverse folds to make them mountain. And don't really worry about what the ridge is doing yet until you have those all as mountain, because this is actually going to push forward and will let us collapse like that. So we can start to collapse along the ridge. It's going to go valley, mountain, valley over here. Or basically inverse of what was creased up before. And I'm just being careful to keep it all precise on the creases. Just like that. And then this one, you can push it forward to let it collapse. And what you'll notice is now we can fold everything back. Let me get the other feathers out of the way. So the reverse fold puts it at 90 degrees, tilted from where it was, and it's going to kind of cross into the other side of the feathers. So you just want to kind of hold them out of the way while you work on it, and you'll know it's correct if it's facing this way. And so all the ones on this side will point that way, and then when we do the same thing on the other side, it's going to again, point here, and it's kind of going to cross each other for now, but later on we're going to shape these out. So don't worry about that too much for now. That's just how you know you're doing it the right direction, or that you pre-creased the right direction. Now the next head feather is going to be a little bit more difficult just because there's a wider range for our reverse fold. It's the corner, you know, has the least amount. This one is going to have a little bit more, and then same thing over here. It's going to be kind of the same. And that means there's intersection on two ridges. So you can see our zigzag creases here. But once again, we can just treat them as mountain folds. So what I recommend is just try to like collapse or crease in along your reverse fold lines first. And that will show you, you know, where it's traveling. And then we will have to invert the ridges. So I'm kind of doing that all the way around, making sure they're all mountain. Going from the other side now, across this ridge. So you see I'm just tracing our pre-creased reverse folds here. And then there's one hiding under here, just like this. There we go. And then once we kind of have those in place, now we can collapse along our ridges. So again, I kind of start at least one from the edge so it gets the right orientation. Makes things a little bit easier. And then our ridge lines up top, they were mountain, but now they're going to be valley. And the grids are probably going to invert as well. So you can kind of see now I can follow the ridge. It's going to go valley, mountain, valley, just like it was in the corner. And I'm kind of just very gently pinching it into place. This is not really something you can do folding flat. It's a little tricky of a reverse fold. And then once we have that, then the reverse fold that crosses the ridge right here, remember it pushes up into itself in order to close. But then of course we have the other side that we need to do as well in order for it to collapse. And then the last thing is this feather is now starting to tilt 90 degrees from where it originally was. So you need to help it, you know, go that direction in order for it to collapse correctly. Just like this. Make sure you're along the grid lines. And then once again, this is the reverse fold that crosses the ridge. Like that. And once it's all like half collapsed, because they're all kind of going the same direction, we can fully collapse it now. So we can squeeze it all together and see how it's rotating 90 degrees, just like our other corner tail feather. And should be good. Now mine is falling off the creases a little bit. So if it's starting to do that, you just want to very gently correct the creases that are not in line, but it's not too bad. And there we have it. For the most part, is our next reverse folded head feather right there. So now we have two of them. 1, 2, and we have 3 on each side. So I'm going to show this third one, and then I'll have you do the other side. This is the same thing. And this third one is going to be the same as the one we just did. So once again, we have to open it up a little bit, find our pre-creases for those reverse folds, make them all mountain so we know where it's going. Just like this. Here's the one along there, and then across the ridge right here. And then it comes back up this way and towards the edge. Now that those are all mountain fold, I think actually, see, we can find where we need to invert the ridge. Is I'm actually going to reinforce this grid line as a mountain. It used to be a valley, but once that's mountain, then we can start to go from the edge and the ridge to invert that crease. And start our collapse. Just like this. There we go. And then we have the part of the reverse fold along the ridge, which we're gonna help close, but then now we need to work on the other side. It's the same kind of thing. Invert this ridge crease. And then follow that ridge into the collapse. Just like that. And then we have our ridge that is in between the ridge, or sorry, the reverse fold in between the ridge, which will then let us fully collapse it down at a 45-degree angle. And then line next to our other head feathers. There you go. So now we have our 3 head feathers on one side. Now we just need to do it on the other side. So I know paper is going everywhere, but let me put these 3 to the side so they see how they kind of stick out the back. Now we just need to do the other side, and it's the same old thing. So go ahead and repeat those reverse folds on the other side, and we'll come back. All right, so the other side of the head feathers are now complete, and I hope you are ready for some sync folds, because there's gonna be quite a few. Now, in terms of orientation, right now I have these feathers kind of folded up towards the head, and the other ones just folded down towards the body, just to keep them out of the way of each other. Technically, they can also fold up into each other too, and it just gets a little crowded. But during shaping, it's not going to really matter. We're going to pull them outwards, you know. It'll be something like this, where they're all grouped up, and then we spread them out. So if I show the Phoenix over here, also notice this Phoenix only has 4 head feathers versus on the upgraded one we have 6. So there's a little bit more, but that's kind of the concept. But what we need to do now is to do some sync folds to collapse them down. And so I'm just going to leave them in this orientation just so it's easier to see. And we're going to start working on the top ones, or basically the ones from the right side, which is shown in the crease pattern right there. All right, and to begin, what we're going to do is pre-crease it. So to pre-crease this sync fold, all we really have to do is fold this feather in half, so edge to edge like this. And it's going to be a little bit difficult with all the layers in between, but really try to be as precise on this as possible. It'll make the sync fold a little bit easier, and it'll make the feather a lot cleaner if it's a clean sync fold. So that's our pre-crease. And now to sync fold it. So I'm going to open it up. And what's interesting about this sync fold is on the edge, it's actually more of a reverse fold because there's nothing else there to really make it a sink. But it's going to become mounted on the outside again. But you'll notice you're going to have to basically do an outside reverse fold for the tip. Now, if your paper is a little bit weak, because we've been messing with it a lot, just unfold a little bit so that you can get that outside reverse fold. Nice and easy. And once that's done, you can recollapse both sides with that in place from what we pre-creased. And you can see that just like this, that's the first part of it done. And now the next part, the next layer in here is an actual sink fold because it's in the middle. And so we're going to have to open that up a little bit more. Now there's two things you could do. You could either treat it as an open sink and open sink it like that. Or you can actually close sink it, which might be easier. So instead of open sinking it, which requires you to open the paper more, you can just kind of use our pre-crease or even just the reference of the edge and push it down along that crease. And if your pre-creases are good, it actually makes this method pretty easy to do, as you can just follow your pre-creases like that and then pop it open on the other side. And something like that. And you know, you can do either way, whatever way you think is easier. I kind of prefer the closed sink just because if you're doing it casually, it's a little bit faster. And also it locks some of the layers in so they don't all spread out. You can see how it's, because it's closed right along here, they stay pretty tight. But yeah, it doesn't really matter. You can do whatever you prefer. Just make sure that it's kind of clean. And there you go. Now it is half the width and it's outside. And so you're going to do the same thing on all of the other feathers. I might show one or two more and then just let you go at it for the rest. Okay, so on to the next head feather. Now, very similarly to collapsing it, right? It's going to be basically twice the sink folds as the one from the corner. But the pre-creasing is the same. So it's, again, there's a lot of stuff going on. So just be very careful as you do this pre-crease, which we're going to fold through our feather. Now, if you need to do this in two folds instead of folding through all these layers like I am, you can kind of go one way, or go one way with like maybe half the layers, so like these ones, and then half the other way with the other layers, kind of like this. And you won't really be able to pre-crease the end bit, but you can kind of do that on your own, right? Once the like most of it is pre-creased. So just depending on your paper, just try to get it precise, or as precise as you can, just because it's going to help you later on. But first things first, let's actually do the outside. So the outside of the sinks, it's basically that outside reverse fold, very similar to before. So this one isn't quite the sink fold yet. And similarly with this outside reverse fold is you have to push it open like this in order for that to collapse. Now, what you'll notice is it's not going to really want to collapse because we actually need to sink fold this very center flap at the same time. So this one we can do an open sink because it's already pre-creased, just like this. Follow our creases over here, and that will allow the rest of the fold to finish on both sides. So I know it's getting kind of small and it's a little bit out of focus, so let me complete this fold and then I will show you a little bit more carefully what happened there. And lastly, I'm finishing this open sink just like this. Close it up. All right, so again, it was a very similar step to what we did before, which was that outside reverse fold. But when we do the outside reverse fold, because it's in the center, it means we had to open sync this flap first in order for the edges to fold together and finish through on both sides, just like that. And again, if this is confusing, you can check the crease pattern right there is what we're doing. And you can see how it's like the mountain valley orientation will be just like this. Now, if you wanted to, you could have closed sync this as well. It's a little bit weird to do, so I just recommend to open sync it. But then if you want to do the close syncs for this section, then you totally can. But yeah, so now that we've done that, we just have to do the sync folds on these sides, which again, you can either do it as a open sync or a close sync. So I'm showing the close sync once again. So I'm pretty sure everyone is more comfortable with open syncs than close syncs. So I don't really need to show the open sync. But I'll show the close sync to just, because why not? Right, you're kind of just pushing it in together, finding your pre-creases, and then completing the collapse along it. It's like this. That way, kind of locks in some of those layers together. Just like that. And now that side is done. That's our center, and we just have this side to do, which is the same kind of thing. Now, my pre-creasing for this one wasn't as clean, so when I go for this sync fold, I'm going to be a little bit more careful, at least to just line it up with the other layers behind it. And over here, let's see if I can still do the close sync. I might have to open sync this one just because it's a little bit too tight to close sync it. I won't be able to get a clean close sync. So we're just going to open sync it. And it'll leave the layers a little bit less locked, but that's okay. It kind of doesn't really matter. It's just preference and the goal of keeping it as clean as possible. Like that. And I'm mostly just using the existing edges from the reverse fold and sync folds we've already done to line this one up precisely. And we're not quite on the line, so I need to go a little bit steeper in this fold. So I'm just going to fix it like that. And that looks pretty good. Squeeze that together. And now we have 2 of the 3 on this side sync folded. But I think I showed enough, right? These are just sync folds and outside reverse folds. Gave you some tips, so I don't think I need to show all of them. That'll take way too long. So I'm going to tell you, go just finish this one and then finish the other side of the head feathers, and we'll be right back. So get sync folding. Okay, so now we're back and we have all the sync folds done. You can see we have these feathers and these feathers all thinned out. So progress is looking pretty good. I think one thing we can do before we move to the next section is to just do the reverse fold for the head flaps or feathers, or they're kind of like ears, I guess. Not sure, but it had some texture, maybe just feathers. And so what we're going to do is we're going to reverse fold inside of here. And so I'm going to pre-crease this side. You don't have to pre-crease, but just to show you like where it's happening, is it's happening this direction, not the other direction. And if I show you the crease pattern, you can actually see, this probably isn't correct. This looks like it's a structured piece right here, but you know, maybe I just messed up or I tried it that way, but honestly, all you have to do is reverse fold that inside. And it makes it kind of easier. I guess if you wanted to, you can technically pull out that flap and then do this reverse fold. But at least from the way I shaped it, there was no difference from the other one. And then the same thing on the other side, except I'm not really going to pre-crease it. I'm just going to reverse fold it inside. Just like that. And there we have it. We can start to see the shape of our Phoenix head. But we're going to leave that as is for now. And next is we have to do the body feathers. So that's right around here. So let's go ahead and collapse those. If you have seen my Dragonplate Assassin, this is actually very similar to what we did there. And if you haven't, no worries. But there is a sequence in pulling these layers out and then getting them into points, which we're going to use as the body feathers. And so on the crease pattern here, you can see that these are what we pre-creased. We pre-creased 4 diamonds, 2 rows, and that's going to be our flaps. So let's start with the top row. I think that's going to be a little bit easier for us. And actually, let's start with just this one right here specifically. You can see that it starts, the pre-crease starts going this way, and then it completes on the other side. So what we're going to do is very carefully open this layer. I'm being very gentle, reaching inside and pulling it until it comes out. And if the paper gets a little stuck, maybe you have to go underneath and poke it out. But just be very careful so that we can kind of pop it out like this. And now there's a few ways to collapse it. I like to collapse it like a square twist. And so how that works is actually, it would be even easier to pull this side out at the same time. So maybe let's do that too. So once we've pulled one side out, let's pull the other side out like this. Again, very gently. We don't want to rip the center. And we're pressing all these mountain folds to reach to a point. There we go. And now we can just let this relax to the side for now. And the way to then collapse this as our square twist is to fold one layer to the side and this top layer up. So we're basically spinning each side like this. So I have this flap pushing upwards, this one pushing to the right. This one can't really push anywhere, so that stays there. And same with that. And it starts to do a squash fold. We're starting to open up that point into a squash fold. All right, you can see it happening. And I'm going to gently pull it, so I'm kind of manually squashing it so that we can go along our pre-creases. And then that's how you can easily complete this fold. Just like that. Now a little bit more down towards the bottom. And this is just kind of clicking itself together according to our pre-creases. Like that. And now that we have that done, I'm going to take this flap and fold it, valley fold it back to where its original position is. And it's going to fold that new diamond in half right there. And then I can just fold this back down like so. However, we also need to do the other side. That's why it's kind of pushing out right there. So I can keep that folded up, and this time I'm folding this flap over to do that square twist, squash fold type thing. And it's basically the same thing, right? So I'm gonna go a little bit faster, more so pushing it into the pre-creases. It's just that, well, twisting the flaps gives enough space so that once these pre-creases do get touched, it can kind of lay flat like we had earlier. But but you want to be careful you don't accidentally squash fold too early and it makes new creases. We don't really want any new creases here. And there we have our second diamond collapsed, just like that. And same thing, we can push this over like that. Nice sharp point, and fold it down. And there we have one of these flaps. Now we have that same thing happening in the next row. So let's take a look at this one. It's going to be pretty much the same thing, and you can collapse it the same way, because now that the we've done the center one, that is going to be the flap that we can move around in order to squash fold it. So I'm opening this layer. I'm also opening the next layer because we're one more layer over. And then basically same thing. So we're squash folding it. And I'm going to try to find the pre-creases. And it's pretty much just a square twist. Let's push it into its pre-crease a little bit more, just like that. There you go. And on yours, you'll very much feel like the moment that it pushes into the pre-creases. It feels very natural, and that's why we pre-creased them, all mountain folds. And then from there, we can valley fold the tip downwards, and then close up all these flaps. And we have that done. Now what you'll notice is we have a lot of stuff going on, and in fact we could even rearrange these flaps so that we get both feathers in the front. And let me show you how I did that really quickly. So we're starting from the center. I'm going to fold the tip upwards. I'm going to valley fold one layer to the side, but see it's grabbing the other layer. So since it's grabbing the layer, I'm pulling them together. Then we have a tip right here. I'm going to valley fold that one upwards as well. And then I'm going to close all the layers back to the side. And then valley fold this tip down. And what you can see is now that tip is hiding inside the other one. And that's what we're going to use to make it look like it has feathers. So let me now do the other side. And to do the other side, once again, I'm keeping the tip pointed up for now. Valley folding this layer up outwards so that I can grab here, stretch the paper out, just like that. Open it up to our pre-creases and treat it like a square twist, squash fold kind of thing. There you go. And once our pre-creases are set, which this one's not quite yet, it's almost there. There you go. Then it should nicely flatten out. Oh, this one is not quite on yet. There you go. There you go. Be very patient with it. There you go. We'll fold the tip down for now. And then once again, we want the tip now inside. So then just this layer, fold it up, close it back, and boom. There we have that first row of feathers done. And so now you just need to do the next row. And the next row is this exact same diamonds. So I will be telling you to do that, basically repeat on the other row, same old thing, and we'll come back when that's done. All right, so now we have our feathers done. They're all done right here, you can see. And now we have the bottom feathers to do. So these are kind of like the tail feathers. I mean, this is the long tail, but there's like a partial tail that it has over here, or like a short tail. Or I guess you could even think of it as just more body feathers. But it's basically the same as what we just did, or at least we're going to fold it very similarly to what we just did, except that because they're 2 units, 2x2 units, we have to do more of a collapse, and it's going to be a little fidgety to get it to recollapse back into itself. However, kind of like what I showed where we are opening layers, lifting one up, pushing it over, then refolding everything, that sort of concept is going to help you for collapsing these middle flaps. But let's get started. And I think it's possible to either do the outside most first, or the middlemost ones first. I don't think it quite matters, or I'm not sure which one is exactly going to be easier, but I'm going to do it from the center just because we already have it all collapsed up like this. And I think this is the easier way to do it. So let's get going. Now, just like before, first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull out the paper layer very carefully. We're pulling it out sideways, but we actually need to go one more because it's a 2x2 unit. So one more here. And now we have our paper open and we can see our pre-creases. One is right there, the other is right there. And we kind of have to collapse this like in 3D. We can reach inside, but you don't necessarily have to if you're very careful. So it's also kind of hard to reach inside all these layers because everything is so collapsed. But what I like to do is I will pull these layers so that our pre-creases, see how it just shot over to our pre-creases like this. So then those can start to fold, and then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side here. So I'm pulling these 2 layers a little bit, so then you can see how it jumps to my pre-creases, just like that. And now we just have to resolve the middle. So I'm going to pull it apart while holding onto my pre-creases over here, so that the other parts of those pre-creases can collapse, just like this. And see, we were able to do that without reaching inside of the model or anything. Now, if we were to close this up, you can see that it's kind of in this plane. So I guess it's not terribly hard. All we really have to do is just fold it back over and it lies flat nicely. So this is kind of an easier middle flap to collapse. There's not a whole lot of weird stuff going on. But now we need to do that 2 more times for this side and then another 3 for the other. So let me just show it again. And now that this is open, we just need to hold it a little bit more carefully. We can't just hold on to this big thick portion as we're dragging out the layers. So again, always be careful when you're pulling out layers like this. You might be really good at it, but you never know if the paper gets stuck a little bit, and it would be very sad if it ripped. All right, so same thing. I am getting it to latch onto my pre-creases at the points. So over here, I'm going to pull just like that. And then once I have those pre-creases, I'm going to pull the middle open so that I can collapse down on the other set of pre-creases. Just like this. Just like that. And now I can kind of sandwich these together. And just like that. And fold everything back to normal. All right, we got one more over here. And I'm gonna gently pull it out like this. And gently pull this one out too. Just like that. And then I'll show this again, just because it's pretty quick to show. But maybe it'll be a good example for when you're folding yours. And this kind of structure is actually, you'll find it in many different origami models. So if you're able to collapse them in this way, maybe you'll remember that for your the next time you run into it. Right, just like that. Fold. And now you'll notice we have this last part sticking out here, and that's represented by this gap in the crease pattern right over here. Now, it's not shown in the crease pattern, but I'm kind of thinking it might be nice to just get rid of this. So one thing you could do is you could just valley fold this at a 45 degree, and it's not terribly thick, so you could just hide it like this and everything would be all fine. However, I like to squash fold it, and so that's actually the pre-crease for the squash fold. And then all you really got to do is now open up some of these layers, and you'll see that actually you want to pay attention to this layer. So there's like 3 layers that make up this area, and what you're going to do is you're actually going to valley fold along the edge of the ridge that we see right here. You're going to valley fold along that, and that will let you squash fold along our pre-creases, and it's again like that same square twist structure that we're so familiar with, and that kind of distributes the layers a little better, and we get our feathers collapsed just like that. All right, so obviously now we need to do the same thing on the other side, so go ahead and repeat those steps on this side and we'll come right back. All right, so we are back and we have completed the other side of the feathers. And so now all of these are done. We can take a quick look at our Phoenix, looking pretty good. There's just a couple more things to do in this tutorial, and then the rest of it will all happen in the shaping tutorial. But let's do some small structural things just before that to save some time. And first thing we're going to do is actually thin out the claws. And so this is pretty easy. We already have the flaps for the claws. Right? We got 4 claws here, but we want to make them a little thinner. So the way to do that is there's 2 things we're going to do. The ones on the edges are going to be a little different, but we can pre-crease them all the same. So let's go ahead and just fold angle bisectors on pretty much every single flap. So first one, folding an angle bisector right here. And then same thing for the next one. And it's going to be folding through a few of the layers. So the goal when you're pre-creasing here is try to keep the points sharp. The sharper it is, the easier it's going to be to make those claws look nice and sharp. So there's just a few more, another one. I sometimes am lazy and just go through all the layers stacked on top of each other, but to be a little bit more precise, you can just do one at a time or fold them inside like this. That'll probably allow you to be more precise. But if you're lazy like me, you can start the pre-crease, and then basically what happens is as the layers start to spread out, that's when you're able to then pre-crease the points. But yeah, that's like don't worry about that too much. And I'm just going to flip it over for this last one, which we're just going to angle bisector on the other side because it's getting a little bit too thick to go through everything. All right, so those are all pre-creased now. And the first thing we're going to do is on the edge ones, we can either sink fold it or just do a squash fold. The squash fold goes outside of some of those pre-creases we just made, but I think it's a little faster and easier than doing the sink fold. So just go ahead and do that squash fold. Now for the internal layers, what we're going to do is just like double reverse folds. So we're going reverse fold in like this along those pre-creases, and then we're going to reverse out the other way like that. Or I guess maybe this is triple reverse fold, because then you see we still have a little part sticking out. So one more, just like this, and that completes one of the claws. All right, so you're going to do that for all the other ones. So I'll show another claw just for the sake of it, but this is probably one of the most basic things we've done in this tutorial. So I don't think I have to explain much on how to do these claws. Right, and then one more reverse fold. And especially on this last one, you can see how I'm prioritizing making the fold go up to a point so that it can be sharp. And that's going to be really important for shaping. A lot of things in this tutorial probably don't have to be perfectly precise, but it definitely helps in this part to prioritize the points for shaping later. All right, so then we got one more over here, and then we have that last squash fold on the outside, which I'll show, because why not? Right there, prioritize the point. I'll have to fold up like that. And one more reverse fold. There we go. And now we have our reverse folds done. We just need that last squash fold on the outermost layer. Just a regular old squash fold. Just like that. And fold it back up. And you can see that tapers out the leg a little bit too. So again, a lot of this benefits our shaping. And that's one side done. So go ahead and do the same thing for the other side. All right, so we are done with the claws, and now there's just one more thing in this tutorial, and that is going to be for the tails. So let me show you the original Phoenix really quickly, and you can see how I have some texture in our tail feathers, or our tail, using the layers of the paper. It's kind of subtle, but let me show you what is needed to do that, because we can't exactly just swivel all these layers individually, but we're actually going to do some ridge squashes. So we've done some of it before, but we're going to be pulling them to make them larger, and that way we're going to be able to do that fun texture. So yeah, let's get started with these. First thing we're going to do is just do a regular squash here. So this is your pretty familiar ridge squash. It doesn't have to be perfect, but try to make it decent, just like that. And now we are going to actually do a small unsync. So I'm going to grab the next layer right here and just pull the small tip of the paper out like that, and then re-collapse it along those creases that made it up before, just like that, right? Just like that. And what that's going to help us do is to do another squash over here. So let's get that one done, just like this. There we go. Just like that. Looking pretty good. And we're going to continue this, maybe not all the way to like the very top, but we're going to do, let's see, probably just one more, and then that will be the last one. So we pulled that tip out. We're going to go this one. This will be our last squash, but not our last unsync. There's a squash. And then we got one more of these unsyncs, and this is going to be the top of this structure. So just like that. Now, if you like this structure or this pattern, you can honestly keep it like that. But I'm going to show you what I did on the other Phoenix. And I'm going to angle it this way, and all these little points, I'm actually going to kind of point them towards the top for now. Just like this. And we're going to start on the second one right here. And what I'm going to do is actually pull that tip while holding onto the end of the tail. And you can see how it pops open like this. And we can kind of imagine a new crease happening from this corner to where our other ridge gouache just was. And we can just crease in a mountain fold on each side. And after that mountain fold, you can see a new crease is naturally forming. So we can just kind of flatten it out along that mountain crease we just made. There we go. And it actually transfers that ridge gouache upwards. So you can see now this flap is a lot larger than the point before. And you might have guessed what the next step is we're going to do the same thing on this one. So, and this one's going to be slightly different because it's going to be even larger. But as I pull here, right, we can start with the same mountain fold that connects where the old ridge gouache started and then where the top one is. But this time it doesn't just make one fold, there's going to be some more consequence folds in between. So if you push in a little bit, that's going to be the first one, and then there'll be another mountain fold that comes off the top. Now it kind of happens automatically and it won't be visible anywhere. So honestly, you could probably just press it down and, you know, have a, you know, fine time with it, but you just carefully push so you don't get any weird, you know, trapped layers or anything, and it actually turns into a nice crease, and that's kind of your best bet. There you go. And then with that top tip, we're gonna let that just hang out and hide in the layers like that. So it doesn't look like there's much that we just did here, but previously, right, we only had this one layer and it was all kind of connected together. But now we have it split up and we have a bunch more different angles. So actually I can do another squash around here or just a swivel fold and they're much more elongated. And that's how I have the different shallower angles that make up the tail. So yeah, now we just have to do that on the other side. If you want, you can go all the way around this one tail because there's 4 sides. The second tail only has 2 sides, which you should do it on both these sides. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do it on this side. But in the back over here, I'm only going to do 1 layer because this one won't matter too much. All I'm going to do here is this first squash fold. And I don't even need to do the unsync. And it's just to make these lines line up. So let me do this. The other tail out of the way for the camera. There you go, like this. Get that squash fold. All right, pull it back. So on the underside, that's all I need to do. Again, you can, if you want, do that whole ridge gouache, but you don't need to. It'd just be if you really like doing that fold. And then now we just continue on with the other side like this. And I'm not going to show all of it because you already, it's the same thing. Right, so go ahead, do the squash fold, do the unsync, you know, however many times we did it. Let's see, that's 1, 2, 3. So 3 times, is it 3 or 4 times? 4 times, and then pull it all into the ridge gouache, just like the other side to get it up here. And maybe it's 3 times, so 3 times. And yeah, and do that on both tails, and I'll give some closing remarks. All right, we are done with both the other side of the tail and the other tail. So just quickly to show you, it's the exact same ridge gouache all the way down, pull and stretch it out, tuck it into layers, and we have some fun things we can use for shaping. All right, so that concludes our collapse. And actually, if we orientate the layers correctly, so tails at the bottom, you've got like this body river pushed up with the legs swiveled out. You have the body feathers, and then the set of body tail feathers ish here. We have our head with our mouth, and then more head feathers and a bunch of head feathers up here. And then we have our wings that are wrapped around the back over here. And we can actually just kind of push them out a little bit like this. And I think you're going to be able to really start to see the Phoenix coming into play. Now actually in shaping, I think the wings are going to be faced this way. So let me just do this to kind of give you a preview at, you know, what we'll be making in the next part of the tutorial. It's like that. So pretty big wings, actually, very, very big wings, and a much longer tail than the original one. So let me quickly compare to the original one. So wings and then tail. You can see here we've got much longer tails over there. And the one thing about this Phoenix I didn't like was how close the wings stemmed out from the legs, but now this time they're kind of sticking out from the back, and they're their own thing. So overall, this is looking really good. Hopefully your structure matches and the collapse wasn't too difficult, but great job for making it through so far. Now we are going to have a lot of fun shaping and turning this Phoenix base into a really nice looking Phoenix. And so yeah, I'll see you soon in the shaping tutorial. Let me know down in the comments if you're folding along with me and if you're excited for the next video. So yeah, I'll see you there.
All this origami, all this origami, all this origami got me going kamikaze now.